that from the?
Well, you're showing up on mine. It's just apparently Banksy's winner.
Awesome, thank you. So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the land on which we're meeting on today, the Whadjuk Noongar country, and pay respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge the lands of all of the people that are joining us virtually, and also thank Uncle Neville for his warm welcome to country this morning. My name is Oliver Tester, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Live Import List and Threat Abatement Planning team in the new Commonwealth Super Department, the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water, or DQ. So my team's primary responsibility is the policy lead on threat abatement, including the development, implementation and review of national threat abatement planning mechanisms. I'm also joined here today by my colleague, Ben Alter at the back here. And so Ben is our lead on disease and pathogens. And so if you haven't already said hello, please do so. And today I'm going to take you through some of the processes of how we handle threats under the EPBC Act. So the first step in managing a national environmental threat is for the threat to be formally recognised and listed under the EPBC Act. So a threat can be listed as a key threatening process if it could cause a native species or ecological community to become eligible for inclusion in a threatened list, cause an already listed threatened species or threatened ecological community to become more endangered, or adversely affect two or more listed threatened species or threatened ecological communities. So we've currently got 22 key threatening processes listed under the EPBC Act, and these cover a range of different threats, including invasive vertebrates like feral cats, foxes, pigs, disease and pathogens, PC dieback, myrtle rust, chytrid, beak and feather disease, like the poor fella on the right here, anthropogenic processes like land clearance and longline fishing, and weeds like invasive grasses and escape garden plants. And so the most recent KTP listing was actually earlier this year, and it's been the first one in quite a significant amount of time, and that was fire regimes that caused declines in biodiversity in April. So for a key threatening process to be listed, there is a sequential process that needs to occur. First up, the key threatening process gets nominated. So there's a public open period where anyone can put a nomination forward. Those nominations are looked at by the Threatened Species Scientific Committee, so our national scientific advisory body, and they recommend a preliminary list that goes to the Environment Minister. The Minister then has a look at that list and determines a final list for assessment and goes back to the Threatened Species Scientific Committee. They then commence an assessment of that nomination and make a recommendation to the Minister, who is the ultimate decision maker about whether the key threatening process gets added to the list. So approaches to support threat abatement. One of the most common approaches to support to threat abatement is the making of a statutory threat abatement plan, or a TAP. So the plans identify research, management and other actions needed to ensure the long-term survival of native species and ecological communities affected by key threatening processes. Once a key threatening process is listed under the Act, the Minister has 90 days to make a decision on whether to have a threat abatement plan, and central to this decision is whether it's feasible, effective and efficient to do so. The department supports the Threatened Species Scientific Committee to provide advice on an approach to abating the threat, and then the Minister then considers that advice from the committee and makes a decision on the planning approach. If the Minister doesn't consider it to be feasible, effective or efficient to have a plan, then the alternate non-statutory options become available, like threat abatement advices, national action plans and strategic national plans. Implementation and review. So part of our role in our team is also to support the implementation of our existing threat abatement plans. And implementation is achieved through the combined efforts of everyone. It's not just a government responsibility. It's all of the work of people like yourselves who are here today all feed into that. So community, government, researchers, NGOs and the private sector. Threat abatement plans also support government in guiding investment through administered programs. So this captures funding like the National Land Care Program, Regional Land Partnerships, which we just heard about in the Otways, Environmental Restoration Fund, and the National Environmental Science Program, which I believe we may be hearing about in the next item with Stephen. Implementation of plans is also tracked by the department. However, we recognise there's a bit more work to do here. It's a bit of a hole for us. And I guess part of that is we face a huge challenge in trying to get across all of the different pieces of work that are happening across all of Australia for all of our key threatening processes. So please, we'd love to keep talking to you guys about what you're doing on the ground and trying to bring all of that information together into a central point. There's also a requirement for us under section 279 of the Act to review threat abatement plans or the decision not to have a threat abatement plan. And so this has happened at intervals of no more than 5 years, or the minister can decide to do it at any point in the life of a plan. And the purpose of the review is to assess the actions that have been undertaken to abate the threat, as identified through the actions, goals, objectives of that threat abatement plan. And it's really an opportunity to reflect on the progress and challenges that have been encountered. The review should propose revised objectives and actions, performance indicators, milestones for the threat abatement plan, identify any significant shortcomings or flaws in the content and coverage of the threat abatement plan, and propose in general terms how these shortcomings could be addressed, and finally provide sound justification for any of those proposed changes. Currently, the department's reviewing a number of TAPs, including the PIG TAP and the KITRA TAP. So this document should be quite familiar to quite a few of you here, particularly Giles. I know I spoke to you earlier, who had quite a lot of involvement in the development of this. So this is the current dieback TAP, which came into force on the 22nd of February in 2019. And the goal of this TAP is to identify and protect environmental assets, threatened species and ecological communities listed under the EPBC Act and other matters of national environmental significance from the impacts of this pathogen. There's also a background document that sits alongside this document, and that provides information on the scope of the problem, the characteristics, biology and distribution of the pathogen, and impacts of the environmental management practices. This threat abatement plan addresses the key threatening process that dieback is listed under, which is dieback caused by the root rot fungus Phytophthora cinnamoni, and it includes strategies to prevent Phytophthora spreading, reduce impacts in infested areas, recovery actions in biodiversity areas, and research actions towards mitigating the impact. And we do a small amount of tracking for this, for the implementation of this, predominantly through a PC teleconference group that Ben has recently engaged, I think earlier this year in March, and also getting in contact with relevant groups on the ground who are doing stuff as well. So if you get a call from Canberra at some time or Sydney from some time, it may be Ben on the phone coming to have a bit of a chat. The other thing I want to point out about this TAP is we're coming up to the formal 5-year statutory review, and that will be undertaken in late 2023, early 2024. And so we'd be really interested in getting you guys engaged and early on that to understand where we might want to take it. I also wanted to take the opportunity to quickly talk to you about murder rust. I know you've already heard a few discussions today about this threat, and there's a couple more scheduled this afternoon. But murder rust is captured under the novel biota key threatening process, and it is a growing threat to our rich biodiversity. So in 2018, the Australian Government's National Environmental Science Program supported the development of the Murder Rust Action Plan, just up here, which sets out recommendations, themes and actions to abate the threat of murder rust and guides effort and prioritises actions. So although the plan has not yet been made as a statutory document under the EPBC Act, it remains a valuable approach to guide action. And recently we've just funded a project to be able to go out and do a stock take of our botanical collections to understand exactly what murder rust susceptible species we have and where the gaps are for further seed collection, seed banking, and establishing of further living collections. I want to share these images with you to demonstrate how widespread and complex the challenge of murder rust is, particularly in Eastern Australia. It's a very different situation than here in WA at this point in time, with the pathogen established right across the eastern seaboard. So I guess it's a little bit like COVID over the last few years, that the east has got it and the west has stayed pretty free. But this here is some photos that I took out of local Bunnings in Canberra. And I've sent the photos through to a couple of experts and they were able to go, yep, it's highly likely to be murder rust, which is a bit of a shame. And so it just puts into perspective how easily it is to be able to spread this disease and how accessible it is. I was going to go buy some of these plants and put them in my garden, and then told the fella at Bunnings, and he went and collected them all and quarantined them and sorted it out. But yeah, a lot of people aren't looking for that. Finally, just on murder rust, where to from here? I guess we are getting increasingly involved in coordinating some work on murder rust, and so we're setting up a national murder rust working group, which will support a nationally coordinated approach to tackling this threat. It includes supporting implementation of the National Action Plan as it currently stands through Australian government programs and initiatives such as the Threatened Species Strategy, and the group will also track implementation of the National Action Plan as well. So our first meeting is scheduled for 15th of September in Brisbane, so please watch this space. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. We've got questions from the back.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, by COPRA being a key threatening process, and we've got black cockatoos, where we've got the black cockatoo referral guidelines, species that are listed under the EPBC Act, threatened species, proponents who are undertaking disturbance activities have got to do flora surveys, black cockatoo habitat surveys. And I see again and again and again, especially in the vulnerable zone, where proponents are taking threat disturbing activities, including state government agencies, don't ever ask to have a dog survey done. I mean, why isn't there some sort of document outlining the requirements for dog surveys to be undertaken in areas really vulnerable zone? Because of course, dog affects black cockatoo habitat and threatened species, and was listed as the second biggest impact behind rabbits, two species listed as threatened in the recent State of the Environment report.
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess it's currently a bit of a gap for us in terms of our federal environmental assessments area, and so it's something that we've been working on. I guess raising the profile of threat abatement plans with those areas. So when they're approving or making conditions on proposed actions, that we do include stuff like that. So I guess it's sort of fallen off the radar a little bit, but we are actively pushing that.
I can tell you, if you get the threat abatement plan from COPRA and you do a search for the words mapping, mapping, you come up with a result of 0.
Yeah.
It's not even mentioned in there. You can't manage dog without mapping.
Yeah, so that's a great example about where we need to speak around the review coming up and what we need to build into the next one to be able to capture some of those really important things.
Bruno? Yep. So I guess we have
the review scheduled in line with the statutory timeline of 5 years. However, the minister can bring it forward at any time. That's a decision for the minister. I guess if there was a compelling enough argument to be able to do that, then we would certainly have that discussion. So I mean, yeah, I'd love to have a chat to you afterwards and go further with that one.
In your opinion, doing the organisation, what would it take for the minister to make that decision? We can file on this
So the minister would seek advice
From the department about what the process is, and so I guess we're here today to be able to chat with you guys and hear exactly those sort of thoughts and ideas. And so having that, we are in regular communication with the minister's office and with government. So yeah, we'll certainly take it back to our team and have a chat about it and how it might work within our schedule of work coming forward.
Might be another really valuable topic for the panel discussion after afternoon tea. Yeah, I think you've all done really well. We've got afternoon tea. We're on a little behind schedule. If you wouldn't all mind getting some yummy food to drink and then coming back, then keep someone on track.